We can't have a game for users if those users can't do anything with the information about themselves. This is where users and accounts becomes handy. This will include things like modifying a profile, updating a username, deleting a user from the system completely, as well as looking for other users that are actively playing the game. Anything related to user information, as well as the accounts that they belong to. Back in the GIF grab server project, we need to modify the server again to allow for the use of RPC functions. And we're going to use an RPC function because we need to delete an account for this portion of the series. So I'm going to create a new folder called controllers, and I'm going to specify a account folder that should be within controllers. And I'll create an account.go file. So let me first start by giving this the package account at the top, because this is how we'll be able to reference this class. And then we can go ahead and start mapping out the functions for deleting a user via the ID. So we'll call this function delete ID. It's going to need a context, needs a logger from the runtime. Then we need also access to the database. We need the Nakama runtime module. Nakama module. Maybe I spelled something wrong here. No, I'm good. Nakama module. Then we need the payload as a string. And then we need to specify what's being returned here. It's going to be a string and a potential error if there is one. All right, hit save to get all our imports. I think I need to capitalize that. Do I? Yeah, I need to capitalize that. What's the issue? Runtime logger. Oh, this is the wrong runtime. There we go. All right, so let's map out this function. First, we need to get the user ID of the account that we're currently authenticated with. And the result will be another property as well, but we don't need that, so we'll just use a wildcard underscore. But I'm going to call the context value of the runtime CTX, runtime CTX user ID, and I want this value as a string. Okay, so this gives me the user ID. We haven't declared what we're going to use it for yet, so we'll do that now. Now I'm going to actually call the account delete method within here, and we're going to assign it the result to an error, because if an error occurs, we want to be able to know that this is exactly what happened, where the error was. So we're going to call if error and then call the Nakama account deleted method, which requires a context, the user ID that we created earlier, and then true to represent that we want this recorded in the database. Now, if error is not nil, which means we actually had something go wrong server side, then we're going to log it first, and we'll say unable, let me use double quotes, unable to delete account, and then we'll also specify exactly what went wrong with the V, the %V, which I believe it just injects whatever this error value is into this string. And then finally, we'll return an error as well as the error itself, the string error and the error itself, because remember, we're returning a string and an error. Now, if there is no error, meaning everything went smooth server side, then we'll return a string that has a map essentially. And the first property in the map will be a status of success, as well as a message that says account deleted successfully. And then we will return nil because there was no error. So the account.go looks good. Now we need to come over to our main.go and actually register this RPC function. So I'm going to create a function called register RPCs, because we can essentially have more than one RPC function used within our app. So any RPC we have in the future, we'll just plug it in here. So this will be called register RPCs. It's going to need a initializer from the runtime initializer. It needs a logger from the runtime logger, and it will return a potential error. Okay, same thing as how we did in here. We're going to first see if there's going to be an error when we initialize these RPC functions. So if error initializer dot register RPC, and then we need to specify an identifier for the RPC function that we created. So let's just call it account delete ID. Now we just got to keep in mind that this is how we're going to call it on the Flutter side. We'll need to use this exact ID to know that we want to call this RPC function delete ID. And then we'll pass in that delete ID function from the account go file. Now, if there's an error here, meaning it's not nil, then same thing as before, call the logger error and say unable to register the function essentially, and then give more information on exactly what happened. Oops. And then let's return the error. Otherwise, everything is smooth. We return nil because nothing went wrong. And now we're going to call this inside the init module. So after init start, same thing as always. If there's an error, we need to know about it. We'll call register RPCs, pass in the initializer that's required and the logger. And then if error is not nil, then we return the error. But if everything is smooth, then we just continue with the rest of the init module method. So this looks good. Let's make sure that this builds. So I'm going to come in here, call the Docker cleanup. All right, looks like that built well. So I'll come back over to the local console because we're running locally now. I'll reload this. And I want to check and make sure that that RPC function was registered. So if I come to API Explorer and hit select endpoint, you can see that the account delete ID has been added because that's our RPC function. And here's all the other ones that Nakama already has out of the box that you can play around in the API Explorer, but this is the one that we're focused on here. So I'm going to grab a random ID from one of these users. I'll grab Trade Designs user ID and use it within account delete ID, send the request, and it says status success, message account deleted successfully. And if I come back to accounts, I can see that Trade Designs was successfully removed from the database. So with those changes pushed up to the server, we can now come back over to the GIF grab client project and manage the Flutter side. I'm going to go to the lib directory and we're going to create a new block for handling fetching an account. So I have the presentation directory, we have queues and pages already. Now it's time to finally introduce some blocks into the series. So I'm going to create a new block, and this block is going to be responsible for reading an account. And I'm pretty sure I mentioned in the previous video, maybe I didn't, but for the blocks, I'm going to give the domain that they interact with, as well as the CRUD operation that it's going to be using. So this one is going to be working with the account domain and it's going to be reading an account. So we'll call this one account read. I'm going to call Mason make Flutter block, Flutter block feature. The name will be account read. Type is block and style is basic. And you know what? I created this in the wrong directory. So let me, actually, I think I could just move it in here. Make sure that you're in the right directory when you call that feature. Okay, so we have account read within our blocks directory. And first thing I'm going to do is modify the account read state. And I have a hotkey created for building the account state, or I'm sorry, for building the state for a block. So I'm just going to delete this, call state class, and specify this as the account read state. And I have it extending equatable, because we always want our states and events to extend equatable, as well as this error state that is something I created, but it essentially automatically requires that we have a nullable error on our class for the state, because essentially whenever we're dealing with block events, we could have an error at any time. So I have this nullable string as well as this copy with method, because we're going to be using this whenever we are emitting a new state and need to modify the properties on it without modifying the state itself. So we have the information needed here, but we also need some extra information. We need the account that we are fetching. So we will have a nullable account on the account read state, and let's import that from the Nakama module. And starting out, we'll just inject it this way. For the copy with method, we'll have a nullable account that will pass in, and the account will be the new account that's specified, but if it's null, we'll just use the account that's already on the state, and then be sure to add the account to the properties. From there, we can now move on to the account read event class. I'm going to have this extend equatable as well, and we're going to create an event for actually reading the account, and we'll just call this read account, which extends account read event. Now within here, we need to create the constructor. It doesn't have any properties on it, so we'll just create just an empty constructor like this, and then we need to override the properties just to follow the flow of things. And we have everything we need for the read account event. So now we can come over to read block. I'm going to take this out. Now let's pass in the requirements for this block. We need a Nakama based client to interact with the Nakama client. And we also need a session service, because we need to gain access to a session. Then we'll pass them in. That looks good. Now let's go ahead and register the event for the read account event. So we're going to go down here, create an event called on read account, and the first parameter will be the read account event, read account, and then we need an emitter for the account read state. Oops, call that emit. All right, and this is going to be async, of course, and I'll register that up here. So whenever read account is triggered, we will call this internal method called on read account. Now, when dealing with block events, I'm not sure if I already covered that in the last. Yeah, we haven't done that yet, because the qubit doesn't use this, but the blocks will. So I have this kind of like a wrapper method, I guess you could say, run with error handling. All it does is it takes an action, whatever the event is, whatever you want to perform actually, and then it essentially handles any errors that could happen with that call. So it's just calling action right here, and it takes care of DIO exceptions, gRPC error exceptions, etc., etc. So I'll be using that throughout the video, but just know that it's essentially a way to handle errors within the app. That way I don't have to write that boilerplate code over and over again. So let's specify the action, which is going to be async. And then we can map out the actual function. So the first thing we need to do is, when we call any event, we want to set our is loading state to true. So I'm going to emit a new state with the is loading flag set to true. And then we need to get a session from the session service, because we can't do any actions with the Nakama client if we don't have an active session. Then I next want to get the account from the client. So I'll call a client, not a client. I'll call client get account and pass in that session. So whatever session we're currently logged into, we're going to get the account for that session. That way, to ensure that I can't get someone else's account information. I can get their user information, but not their account information. And then I will emit the state again with that new account. Let's see. Oh, need to await that. Perfect. Okay. Now the block's done. Now we have this account read page, but this block isn't going to be UI specific because we're going to essentially use the account read block on the main menu page. So I'm just going to comment this out since we don't really have a use for it. So now I'm going to come to the main menu page, and I'm going to make sure that every time we come to this page, we want to call the read account event to make sure that we have the most up-to-date account information when we're on this page. I can call that with context.read account read block. Let me import, add read account. All right. So that means that whenever we come to this page, we're automatically going to read the account information again. Now, since this block, the account read block, is going to be used in different areas of the app, we want to be very careful and make sure that we're not listening to changes on this block in every class. We want to specify, I only want to listen for changes on this block if I'm on a certain page. So we can do this by creating an extension that will let us know, are we currently on this page or not within the navigation route? And if we are, then we'll listen for changes on this block. Otherwise, we won't. So let me go to create an extension. Let me see. Within presentation, we have qubits pages. So create one called extensions. And this will be an extension on the build context. So build context extensions.dart. And this is an extension, extension build context extensions on build context. Okay. An extension is a way to add some extra functionality to some already made classes. So this one, we're going to have one that lets us know if we are currently on the right page or not, if we're currently on a page or not. So we'll call this is on page, and we're going to pass in a route, whatever route that we want to know if we're currently on. So the first thing is we want to get the top route, which is essentially whatever route is at the top of the navigation stack. That's the one that we're on right now. So final top route, we'll get that from the go router state. Oops. Dot of this, because we're extending on the build context. Let me import that. And then I'll get the top route, which could be nullable, and then get the name. So top route could be a nullable string. So then we're just going to simply return, does this top route equal null? Does it equal null? And if it does equal null, we return false because we can't even check because it's null. But if it's not null, then we're going to compare it to the route that we passed in. So that looks good. Now we'll use this extension on this class when we use a listen when. So if I need to change this into a block builder, a block consumer, I should say. So we'll take everything right here, and we're going to return a block consumer. Oops, yep, state. And we're going to return that widget. Let me specify that this will be for the account read block, account read state. Okay. The listener, for right now, I think we'll just have a message pop up saying that there was an error or not. If state dot error does not equal null, modal util show error, and whatever that error is. Okay. Now we also, like I said earlier, we need to specify the listen when property, because this lets the block consumer know only make changes when this condition is true. So we need to say prev and cur. Now, if context.is on page, and whatever route we specify, so go routes.main.name. So this will only return true if we are currently on the main page, which we are, and we have this listen when set right here. So if there are changes in another area of the app, this page won't listen to changes there, which is what we want. So now let's go back to the builder, and we're going to modify a few things here. So we have this flex grid view widget, but I want to add some extra information that will just pretty much say the user's name once they get to this page. So I'm going to make this a column instead and wrap all of that in an expanded widget. And then I'm going to just create a text widget on top that will display the username. It'll just say welcome back, whoever the user is. So I'm going to go up here and create that user really quick. Final user equals state.account.user. Okay. So user is a nullable user object. So this will say welcome back, and it'll be user.username. But if that's null, then just say no name. We really should never run into an issue where we don't have an account, because if we're on this page, that means we've been authenticated already. But just to follow the flow of things and make sure that we're always safe, we'll have this check in here to make sure that that's not null. Then I'm going to modify the style a little bit. Let me create a theme object up top. Theme.of context. And then I'll set the text theme. Then I'll set the text theme to display small. Perfect. Now we have all that cleared, but we did not inject the account read block into the context yet. So this is going to be a pretty widespread block. So we're going to be using this everywhere. So we'll have this injected at the top of the app. So we'll go back to main.dart and look for the multi-block provider right here. And we're going to create another one now for the account read block. Let's see, block provider of type account read block. And we need to pass in a get Nakama client as well as a session service. Okay, that looks good. Let's see what this looks like when we run the app. Okay, let's log in. And I've just logged in. As you see at the top, it says welcome back trade codes. So we are successfully reading the account information from Nakama. Now that we've been able to successfully get the account information, we need to get the user information. And these two things are a little bit different, and I'll explain how they differ in a little bit. But first, we want to create a block similar to account read that will read the user. So we'll just call this the user read block. So I'm going to, So I'm going to open up the terminal, create another block. Let me make sure I'm in the right directory this time. Presentations, blocks. And I'm going to call, actually, I think it's already in there. Mason make, yep. I'm going to just change this to user read. Okay, the user read block is created. So if I come to blocks, go to user read, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to modify this user state class. User read state. Something got out of whack here. Equatable. Oh, there we go. We have the is loading and error properties, but we also need to have the user object, a nullable user, as well as a Boolean value that will let us know if this user is my user or not. Essentially, is my profile or not. Let me import that user. And then we'll pass this in how we need to. This.user, this.is my profile. Since this is a non-nullable Boolean, we need a default value similar to is loading. And we'll just set this to false. We're going to assume that by default, a profile is not mine until I can prove that it is. Then I'll pass this in to the copy with the nullable user and the nullable bool for is my profile. User will be user if it's not null. If it is, we'll use the one that's already on the state. And is my profile will equal is my profile, or we'll use the one on the state. And then finally pass in the user and is my profile to the props. Okay, that looks good. We need to add an event for the user read event. Extends equatable, and this one will be called read user. Class read user extends user read event. Now for read user, I'm going to add the constructor for read user and override the properties as such. Okay, that's taken care of. Let's go to the block. I'll take this out and we'll add what we need for this block. First, we need a UID because we're going to use this block for whatever profile we're trying to read for, whatever user information we're trying to get. So we need the ID of the user. And then everything else is the same. Nakama based client and a session service. So we'll pass these in. Oops, UID, this dot client, this dot session service. Now I need to create the method for reading a user, and I've created a hotkey for handling that as well, just to save some time. Call this read user for the user read state, and then register this up top. Okay, within read user, first, we're going to set the is loading flag to true. We're going to get a session as always. Now I need to actually get the user, and we can do that by calling the get users method on the client. Now get users, as the name suggests, is it's going to return an array of users, but we're only going to specify one UID, so it won't really matter. We'll call await client.get users, passing the session. The IDs is an array of string, but we only have one UID that we're checking for. So we'll just pass in that UID. Now, if users is empty, then we're going to throw an exception, no users found. We really should never come across this. If we have a UID, then we should have a user in the database, but it's always good just to be safe. And then we're going to get that single user from users. So it's not empty, right? That means there's at least one in there. We only care about the first user. They're going by UID, then we're just going to assume that this is the user that we want, which is accurate. And then we're going to see if this is my profile or not. Based on the current session UID, because that's the account that we're logged into, does this equal the user ID of the one that we just fetched? So my user ID compared to the UID that we're viewing this profile for, we're going to compare those. If they're the same, this is my profile. So then we just need to emit the state with these new values, the user that we have, as well as is this my profile. That looks good. Let's go to the view, and user read page is essentially going to be quote unquote the profile page. So I'm just going to change the name of this to profile page.dart. Didn't mean to do that. Let's discard that. Profile page. Okay. Profile page and profile view. And then what do we need for this user block? We need a UID that we will pass from the profile page. Final string UID. Because whenever we go to the profile page, we will know which UID we're going to be checking for. So we'll pass in the UID here. We need the get Nakama client as well as the session service. Context.read session service. All right, we got everything we need there. What's the issue here? Oh, it changes the profile page. All right, that all looks pretty good. So we can close all this out. One more thing, whenever we are creating this user read block, essentially, we want to make sure that we're calling the event for reading the user also. Otherwise, we'll load the block, but we won't take any action to actually get the user information. So whenever this block is created, meaning that we're now on the profile page, we're going to call read user. Now, I want some extra information for the user, like an avatar, and the logic for that can get a little murky. So I'm going to create another extension that will kind of handle some of that complex logic for us. This one will be called user extensions. User extensions.dart extension user extensions on user. Beautiful. I essentially want a network image for whatever user I'm dealing with. So this is going to return a network image, and we'll just call this get avatar. So first, I'm going to see if they actually have a valid avatar, meaning it's not null and it's not empty. So has valid avatar, avatar, can't spell today, avatar equals the avatar URL, because that's what's currently on the user object. If that doesn't equal null and the avatar URL is not empty, that means we have a valid avatar. And if that's the case, then we can return a network image. First checking, do we have a valid avatar? If we do, use that avatar that is on the user object. If we don't, then we're going to call on our globals directory and just use the empty profile avatar. So essentially, if they don't have an image in the database yet, then we'll just display an empty image. So this takes care of this logic within here. Now I need to go to the profile page. I'm going to go down to the view, and within here at the top, within here, I'm going to get the user information. So final user equals state. Oops, what's going on here? I already have that. Oh, it should be in here. I'm sorry. So final user equals state.user, because that can be nullable. So just know we have a nullable user right here. But let's go ahead and return GG scaffold widget. The title is going to be the username of that user, which could be null. And if it is, then we'll just have an empty string. And then for the child, I'm going to now check and see, are we loading? Because if we are, let's just return a circular progress indicator. Circular progress indicator. But if it's not loading, then let's go ahead and map out the widget that we want to display. It's just going to be a column right now. Let me add some padding first. Edge and sets all 32. And that child will be a column. Okay. And within that column, we have some children. The only one we have right now is a circle avatar, which is going to be the avatar of the user's profile. We'll set the radius to 100. And the child, I'm sorry, not the child, the background image will be the user that we have. And we'll use that get avatar extension that we created. Add the const modifier here. And then I also want to make sure that this entire widget expands the whole page, because when you're working with columns, the columns only expand as far as the content that's within inside of it. So circle avatar is only going to spread out 100 pixels, which means we wouldn't have a full page. But we can ensure that if we set cross-axis alignment to stretch. All right, beautiful. Now we need a way to actually get to the profile page. So let's create a new go route for profile. Oops, profile. And then I'm going to go to the at routes and need a new go route within here. Let's see, the best place to put this would probably be, yes, because it's on the main route. So I'm going to call go route profile, and I could directly return the profile page. Actually, I can't directly return the profile page because we need some extra information. So of course we're going to return the profile page, but remember, we need the UID of whatever profile we're looking for. And we can get that by specifying that from the context that we get when we go to the next page. So when we go to the profile page, we can get whatever UID was passed via the path parameter. And to make it a path parameter, I will add a UID. And then from there, we can extract that UID from the path. State.path parameters, whatever the UID is. If UID equals null, we'll just throw an exception. We shouldn't even be this far without a UID. Beautiful. Now let's go to the main menu page, and we need a menu button for going to the profile page. Menu button, profile. The route will be profile, and then let's not forget we need some path parameters, and we're going to use the UID that we can get from the account. Okay, we can get the user ID from the account that is currently on the main menu page, because remember, we're listening for, or not necessarily listening, well, we are listening, but we have the current account information from the account read block here. So let's see what this looks like in the app. All right, I'm in the app, logged in. If I hit profile, I am navigated to this profile page that says trade codes at the top. So that's exactly what we want. Nothing in here yet, avatar, but I don't have an image yet, so it's just this gray circle, but we do have our profile page working correctly. All right, so we're able to get user information. Now we need a way to update an account, because let's say we want to update a username, for example, then we need to modify that on the account. So I'm going to create another block similar to account read, user read, but this one, since it's a update CRUD method, this one will be called account update. So I already have this in here from the last time I created a block. We'll call this, actually, let me make sure I'm not in the right directory again. Presentation, blocks, and this will be called account update. Account update. Now let's go to the account update that was created, and I'm going to modify the state again. Let's see, state class account update. All right, now we have this information here that's already good, but we also need to have an extra success flag similar to the error. If we have a successful account update, we want to let the user know that it was successful. So that will be a nullable string like error, and just call it success. And we'll pass it in the exact same way that error is handled via the constructor and the copy with method. that's all we have to do for the state. Now we need an event that will allow us to update the username. But actually, it will allow us, we need a method for updating the account. Right now, we're only updating the username, but this method will essentially update anything on the account. Class update account extends account update event, and it's going to have a username on there. And then we'll create the constructor update account, passing that username, and then override the props to have that username. Now let's go to the block, and as we've done time and time again, let's add what we need for this block. We need an account object because when we go to this account update block, we need to know what the current account information is. That way we know what we need to update from. So we're going to pass in an account. Let's do our import. And then session service and a comma-based client. Oof, client, and I spelled that wrong too. There we go. This.account, this.session service, this.client. Okay, and we need a method for update account for the account update state, and then register here. Update account on update account. Now within here, same thing as before. State.copy with is loading true because we're starting a new request. We'll get that session from the session service. Oops, session. And then we call the client, and we can pretty much update whatever we want on the client. Well, not whatever we want, but there's a few things we can update. So let's take a look at that. So we can update these properties on the account: the username, display name, avatar URL, language tag, location, or time zone. Right now, the only ones that I can really see that I may be working with is the display name, username, and avatar URL. But for this example, let's just focus on the username. So we're going to update the username that we get from the event. And then once that is successful, we need to update the success parameter. State.copy with success. And the success will just simply say account updated successfully. And we don't have an account update page, so I'm going to comment that out. Now, this block, the account update block, is what we use to actually update the account information, but we're also going to have a user update block that will be responsible for getting the information that we want to update, and then we'll send that information to the account update block. So they're going to work in tandem when it comes to modifying users and accounts. So I'm going to create another block called update block. User update. And let's go to user update now. User update, and we're going to modify this state. User update state, quotable and error state. So I'm going to add a forms submission status object that will essentially just let us know what is the current status of the form that we're filling out, because the user update is going to be essentially the edit profile page. So forms submission status. Then I'm also going to use a short text form field that will essentially just act as a UI text field, but has some unique properties. It's from the forms package. Be sure to check that out. But I'll show what that looks like here shortly. And that'll just be called username. And we also want a success field on this one as well. So let's go ahead and add these in. Now the status by default will be form submission status initial. And the username is going to be a short text.pure because this is the first use of the field. Nothing's been modified, so it's pure, not dirty. And then success will be success. I think I'm doing these wrong. This dot status, this dot username, this dot success, this dot success. There we go. Oops. Then within our copy with, we're going to have a form submission status that we're passing in. We'll have a short text that we're passing in and a success that we're passing in. Status will be status, or the one that's already on there. Username will be username, or the one that's already on there. And then success will be success. And let's not forget to add these to the props. All right, the block is taken care of. I'm sorry, the state's taken care of. Now we need some new methods. We need a method for initializing this block, a method for changing the username, which means the user is typed in the text field, and then we need a submission button or a save form button or a save form event. So let's create those methods. We have init, which extends user update event. Create the constructor. Override the properties. Then we also need one for username change. User update event. And this one is going to have a name on it, because whenever we're calling username change, we need to know what the most updated name is now. And we'll call this username as well. The constructor, username change, this dot username, and override the properties. And then finally, the method for saving the form, we'll just call it save form, extends user update event. Oops. And we'll override those properties as well. All right, we have the events ready for our block. So we have state and events ready. Now let's go ahead and modify the block. Take this out. The only things that we need for this class is the account, because we need to know what the account information should be at start, and then a session service, as always. Pretty much every block is going to need a session service. Session service. And I'll pass those in session service. So first we need to register the init method, user update state. And the init method essentially is just going to set the username property and the status of the form. So it's not really doing any API requests or anything like that. It's just going to be a straight state emit. So we'll call emit state.copy with, and the username is going to be the short text field .dirty, which is essentially just saying create a new short text widget, but it's dirty now because it's being modified. And we're going to specify the account, user, and then the username. Now, if that's false, if any of that's null, then we'll just return an empty string. You could do no name, empty string, doesn't really matter. And I probably am inconsistent here throughout the app, but you get the point. We don't have the information, so we're not going to display anything. And then we also want to set the status of the form submission to true. Oops, not in here. Forms submission status initial, not true, I'm sorry, initial. Okay, let's register on init. Oops. Perfect. Now let's create the method for saving form. Actually, I'm gonna do this. I'm sorry. Now let's do the method for username change. Username change. User update state. Register up top. And this is similar because this isn't doing any API requests either. So we don't have to worry about any try catch or anything like that. Just another straight emit. So state.copy with, and the username is just going to become that same thing up here, but we actually have a username value to pass in now. So I'm going to copy and paste that just like that. So whenever we call on username change, we're just updating that username property, which is a text field widget, to whatever that value is. But we're not going to do this check here. Instead, we're getting the username from the event. Okay. Finally, we need the method for saving the form. Save form, user update state. And this is an emit as well, because all we're doing is setting the status to in progress. Emit state.copy with status form submission status in progress. And this will let us know if we now need to call on the account update block to actually update the account information. Let me initialize that up top. Oops, save form. All right, perfect. Now let's close these out because these are good. And the user update page, this is essentially the edit profile page. So I'm going to change the name, edit profile page. And this will be edit profile view. And this block needs an account, which we can get from the account read block. So first I'm going to, let's call on the account read block. Context, whoops, context.read, account read block. And then the account will just be the account read block state.account. And I'm going to add the exclamation mark just because I assume that we should have an account at this point. We shouldn't even be able to get to the edit profile page if we don't have an account. So we have an account, we'll pass that into the user update block. We also need the session service, context.read session service. Now, this for this user update page, we're going to be using two different blocks, like I mentioned earlier, the user update block as well as the account update block. So instead of returning just a simple block provider, we're going to return a multi-block provider. Multi-block provider. Pass this in here as the first one, and that child will now become, whoops, why is this happening? Oops. Block provider. There we go. And we'll take that child out because this is the new child now. And then we need another block provider for account update block. And this also needs a get Nakama client. All right, perfect. Now, if we come down here to the view, we're going to need to listen for changes on the account update block as well as the user update block. But since the user update block, we're going to need to be listening for changes as well as building changes. So we'll just use a block consumer for that one. But we only need to listen for changes on the account read block. So we'll, instead of this block builder here, we're going to return a block listener for the account account update block. Account update state, and then specify the listener here. And that child will be a block consumer for the user update block. Update state. And we'll fill those out in a second. But first, for the listener on the account update block, we're essentially going to see if we have a success, then we want to display a mode that says it was successful in updating your account, and then pop the user back to the previous page because they've already updated their information on the edit profile. So now we can revert back to the previous profile page with those updated changes. And if there's an error, we'll show the error and the user won't be able to leave the page just yet. So if state.success does not equal null, we'll show that modal, show success, and whatever the success is, as well as popping back to the previous page. And we're going to pass in this true value because on the profile page, we'll have another listener that will know if it was true, then we need to update the account read block as well as the user read block because the account information has changed. Let's also handle the error. Error does not equal null. Then we'll display that. Show error. And we also need to call the init function on the user update block again because we have an error, which means that we're in a different state. Now let's clear the error out, go back to the initial state of the form by calling init again. Context.read user update block dot add init. All right, so let's go down to our block consumer down here. Let's first handle that listener. Now within the listener, if the status on the form submission, like I said, if that equals form submission status in progress, which means that we've hit submit, then what we want to do is call on the account update block and call update account. Account update block, add update account. And we're going to update the account with the username dot value that's on that block. All right, and then let's go ahead and work with the builder. Context state. I'll just throw unimplemented as we're working on this. First, let's create. Let's get that block because we're going to need that. We're going to need the block, the user update block for this operation. Final user update block equals context.read user update block. And then I'm just going to return a GG scaffold widget at the top. So right out the gate, we're just going to go straight to the widget. The title will be edit profile. And the child will be a center widget. So we have that. I'll take this out. Now within here, we're going to check and see if we're currently loading or not. Now I have a loading property on here, but we technically already know we're loading if the form submission status is in progress. So I'm going to use that instead right here. So for the child, if state.status equals forms submission in progress, then let's return a circular progress indicator. Circular progress indicator. Okay. If not, then let's just continue with the rest of the widget. We're going to return a column, and let me wrap this in some padding. Padding edge insets all 32, and return the column. And then let's map out the children. Actually, I want these widgets, everything that's in the column widget, I want it to also be aligned via the center. So we'll set the main axis alignment to center. And then we will start mapping out the widgets on this page. Now, since we're editing a form, we need a form widget or a short text input widget. So I'll add that here, short text input. And the short text will be the username that is specified on the state, and the label will be username. Also, the on change, whenever we're making changes to this form, we have a string value that's brought back called name, and we're going to call that block, the user update block, to then call the username change event, I'm sorry, and just pass in name. So as they're typing, whenever they make changes to this widget, we're calling our block to update the username property that's on that block. Now we have the input widget. We need a button that will allow us to actually save the form once we're done. So I'll create an elevated button, and let me specify the child first because the on press is going to be a little lengthy. It'll just say save. Now the on pressed, it's going to do a few things. First, we need all the inputs that we're going to be using on this page, which really is just the username right now. As the form gets bigger, with more progress, we'll add other inputs. But right now, this is the only one that's on the form, and it's a list of forms input. Then we need a way to know if the inputs are valid, because it's a form, so we can actually validate that via the forms package called forms.validate and pass in the inputs. Now, if inputs is not valid, which means that there's something wrong here, then we need to let the user know that they have an error and the form is not valid. So we'll call show error, and the title will simply say form not valid. And then we'll also return to ensure that no other actions are taken. If the form is valid, we then need to confirm and ask the user, are you sure you're ready to submit? So we'll just get a confirm going using the show confirmation method on the modal util. Title will be save profile, and it'll say press yes to confirm. All right, that looks good. Actually, it can look better. There we go. Now, since confirm, it's a nullable bool, so it can be true, false, or null. So the only way we want to continue this operation is if confirm equals true. If it does not equal true, which means it's false or null, just return, act like nothing happened. If everything is smooth, then we'll call that user update block add, and we're going to call save form now, because now we want to actually go into the in progress form submission status and update the account. All right, that looks good. As always, we need a way to navigate to the edit profile page. So I'm going to create a new go routes. This one will be for edit profile. Edit profile. Oops, there we go. Spelled that wrong. Edit profile, and had another typo. It's crazy. Edit profile. Okay, now let's go to at routes. And on profile, since you would go to the profile page first, then the edit profile page, we're going to have the edit profile page as a nested route on the profile go route. We'll create routes, a new go route for edit profile, and we will return the edit profile page. Just like that. Oops. All right. Now, in order to actually go to the edit profile page, we need to go to our profile page and add an action there that will allow us to go. And we can just add some actions to the scaffold widget. Now, we only want to show this action if this is my profile, meaning no one else should be able to edit my profile, only me. I know it's my profile if is my profile is set to true. So this button is only visible if it's my profile. We will return an icon button field tonal, and the onPressed method is essentially going to wait for a success from the edit profile page. Like I said, if we go back to the edit profile page, oops, edit, actually I didn't update that yet, user update page. Let me change the name to this to edit profile page. All right, now remember I had previously said that if, let me see, where was that at? True. Yes, so if there's a success with the account update block, we're going to pop back to the previous context with the true value, and that's essentially going to set this success value here to true. If success equals await.context.push, whoops, await context.push name, and we're going to expect a Boolean value back, and the name is going to be go routes dot let me import go routes dot edit profile dot name, and let's specify the path parameters here. And we need the path parameter because the edit profile page is on the same route, so to speak, as the profile page, so it needs that information. And we already have that here with user ID. I'm going to add this icon real quick too. It'll be an edit icon. Now, if we have a success, which means that the account has been updated, if success equals true, because this could be nullable as well, because the user could just come back to the previous page without true or false. They just came back and it could be null. So if success is true, we're going to call the user read block, and we're going to read the user again because the information has changed. So we want the most up-to-date information, and we want to do the same thing for the account read block because that information has changed as well. Whoops, not we want read account. All right, that looks good. Let me see. All right, unnecessary import here, and that's good. So let's see what this looks like in the app. Okay, navigate to the profile page. As you can see, this is my profile. So I have this icon for editing the profile up here. So if I hit this, I'm now navigated to this page. Now this should have added my username in this field. So let's go back to the user update block and see what happened. So on init, that should have been called when this block was created. And it wasn't. Okay, let me add that here. Add, I think I had it originally and then may have removed it. Call init. All right, so let's refresh this now and see what we get. Go to profile, trade codes, and now my name is in the form. Perfect. So let's change my name to something like trade codes XX. If I hit save, it says account updated successfully. I'm popped back to the previous page, and as you can see, my username changed up here as well as on the home page. Now this page is listening to the account read block, and this page is listening to the user read block. Now let's try to change it to a name that's currently already in the database. So if I come over to the production database, look for a username that's already been taken, and I'm going to try to update the username to that. And once I hit save, I get an error that says username is already in use, which is exactly what we want. And it essentially just reinitializes that state again to whatever the previous value was before it, which was trade.codes XX. So edit profile is working as expected. Okay, so we have update account working. Now I want to be able to search for users that are currently in the app. This will still be on the user domain. However, the new CRUD operation that this would be associated with is technically a list user functionality. So I'm going to create a new block for user list. Let me go, we're already in the blocks directory, and I believe I have the command already. There we go. I'm going to change this to user list, and we should now have a user list block. There we go. First, as always, I need to modify the state. So I'm gonna take this out. State class, user list state. And there are two things that we're going to add to this state class. So first, we need to always know what the current query is when we're searching for a user. So we're going to have a string query on here. And we also need to have a list of users that are bought back from the search query. I'm going to create a list of user, just like that. Let me import that. Okay. Now query, by default, we'll just make it an empty string. This.query equals empty string. And the users will be a empty array by default. Then we'll pass this into the copy with and list of user. Perfect. Query will be whatever the query is or what's on the state. And then users will be users or whatever is on the state. All right, that looks good. Now I need to create an event for actually searching a user. So we're going to go to the user list event. And let's create the first method, search user. Search user extends user list event. And on this, we're going to need a username, because we need to know who we're searching for. Oops. Override the properties. All right. And we need a method for clearing the search, which is essentially going to allow us to restart the query and clear the current list of users that may have been bought back in a previous search. Clear search extends user list event. And this will just have clear search and then the properties that we're overriding, which is nothing. All right, we have our events. Let's head over to the block. And I don't like how that's imported. Here we go. Take this out. Now let's go ahead and add what we need for this class. We need a Nakama based client, and we also need a session service. Final session service. This dot client, this dot session service. Okay, let's go ahead and register these methods. Block event for search user, user list state. And for search user, let's start by setting that flag. Get that session. And then we're going to call get users, kind of like we did within the other block. But this one, we're going to be passing in a username to get the user, not by ID, but by username. Final users equals await client dot get users, passing the session. We're going to pass in an empty array for IDs because we're not searching by IDs, we're searching by usernames. And the only username that we have is the one passed in from the event. So it's going to bring back an array, but usernames are unique, so it's only going to be one user. So then just emit those results oops, emit state.copy with, and the query will be username and users will be users. So on search user is good. Now we need to register the clear search. Clear search user list state. Oops, jeez, I can't type. On clear search. All right, and clear search isn't really going to do too much. We just, like I said, clear the query and reset the users that are in the array. So this is going to be a straight emit state.copy with query empty string, and users now becomes an empty array again because we've cleared the search. And I'm going to change this user list page to search users page, and search users view. And let's see, what does this block need? Get Nakama client and a session service. For this page, we need to create a widget first that will be used to give some extra information about a user. So essentially like a user list tile that will be used when we bring back the results of the users that we searched for. So I'm going to go into presentation and create a widgets folder that will hold this user list tile. We'll just call it user list tile.dart, and it's going to be a stateless widget called user list tile. Let's add our import, not widgets, material. All right, and then from there, it's going to require a user because we need it to get the information, and pass it into the constructor. And then down here in the view, first let me create a theme that we're going to use because we're going to need some UI here. All right, and then we're going to return a list tile. So I'll take this container out, and the title, title will be a text widget that has the user's username, and as always, if that's null, then we need to handle that accordingly. I'll just say no name here. I'm going back and forth a lot. You know what? Actually, we shouldn't have this issue because I'm sorry. Username could be null. Okay, the user won't be null because it's not nullable, but the username can be. So we're on the money with that. All right, and then I'll change the style a little bit as well. Theme.text theme.title large. All right. Now let's see what else we can add. I'm going to have the leading property a circle avatar, and that background image is going to be the user get avatar. And then on tap, what we want to do is when we tap a user list tile, we want to then navigate to that user's profile page, and we can do that by calling context.pushed name. Pushed name. The name will be go routes dot. Let me import that. Go routes profile dot name, and the path parameters will be UID user dot ID. All right, we have our user list tile. Now let's go back to the search users page. Search, I didn't change the name. Search users page. Search users page. Let's go here, and we're going to create a few things up top first. Let's take out this block builder because we're not going to use that just yet. throw unimplemented error. But first, I want to create a theme. Theme of context. Import that. Then I need a text editing controller because we're going to be using an input widget essentially. That way we can type in the username that we want to search for. Final controller equals text editing controller. And then we need the block as well, the user list block. So equals context.read user list block. All right, now let's return a GG scaffold widget and start mapping this out. So this page will be search users, and this will be a column. The children within here is going to be the animated search bar, which will wrap in some padding. Animated search bar, and let's give it some padding, 32. And let's go ahead and map out what the animated search bar needs to do. First, I want it to autofocus. That way, whenever we go to this page, we can automatically start searching. We're going to pass in the controller. That way, it's always mapped to that value. The label will be enter username. Label style will be text theme, headline small. And the search style will be the same. So we can copy and paste that. On field submitted. This is what happens when we're actually ready to perform the search. So we'll call the user list block, add search user, and pass in that query. And then finally on close is what happens when the user may hit the X button and want to close the search bar. User list block, add clear search, because essentially we should clear the search if they hit the X button. All right, and we'll add the const modifier here. So we have that, the animated search bar. Now we're going to actually display the results, and we're going to do that by wrapping the list view builder within an expanded widget because it's inside of a column. So we want to make sure that it's spaced properly. So the child will be a block consumer of type user list block, user list state. And let's provide the listener. If state.error does not equal null, we'll show that error. State.error, there we go. And then we'll build the builder. First thing we need, let me add this while we're building this out, unimplemented. All right. First thing we need to do is get the users that are currently on the state. And remember, it can never be null because by default it's an empty array. So it's either going to be an empty array or an array that has some values. And we're going to check for a few conditions before we actually display the results. First, we want to check and see if we're actually loading. So state is loading. Then we're going to return a circular progress indicator. Now, if we're not loading, then we're going to check and see if the query is empty. So state.query.is empty. If it is empty, then we don't need to show anything, and we can just show an empty view or a sizebox.shrink. That'll work just fine. Now, let's say the query is not empty. We then finally need to check and see if the users list is empty. So if users.is empty, then we're going to display the no results widget for users. And it's essentially a widget I created that just says, hey, you don't have any results for this domain, which is users. Now, if we're not loading, if the query is not empty and the users list is not empty, then we can actually return the list view builder. Provide the index. We're going to return the user list tile that we created earlier, and that will be users at that index. I'll take this out and let's provide the item count, which is users.length. And I'll add these const modifiers here. Perfect. Now we need to provide a route to get there, as always. So I'm gonna go routes, create search users, and then go to @routes and create a new route for search users. Oops. Search users, we'll go to the search users page. That looks good. And then we need a way to navigate to that page. So we go to the main menu page and create a new menu button for going to search users, which will go to the search users route. Now let's see what that looks like in the app. All right, I'm going to hit users and we're already activated. So let me type in trade codes XX. No user found. Trade codes XX. Need a dot. Trade.codes XX. And there I am. So I'll select me. It takes me to my profile. Let's try another user. Let's try that should, let me see. And we type in trade designs. We have this user pop up. This is not my profile, so I don't have the edit icon, but this is trade designs profile. All right, clear that out. But yeah, as you can see, the search is essentially working. I think I may need to modify something because the result isn't cleared out when I click cancel on close. Oh yes, it is. But I don't think this is the right behavior. Oh, you know what? I need to modify the onChanged. onChanged. Let's see. Val. We'll just say query. But essentially, if query dot is empty, then we want to also clear the search. All right, let me try that now. So I'll type trade.codes XX and let's see what happens when I clear it out. There we go. So search users is working as expected. As I mentioned earlier in the video, we created an RPC function for deleting an account on the server. So now it's time to be able to call that same RPC function within the Flutter app. So let's go ahead and get started with that. I'm going to create an enum that will represent a list of RPC functions that we may need in the future. Right now we only have one, which is for account delete, but it's good practice just to have this as an enum because I can see us having more of these in the future. I'll create RPC functions.dart and it'll be enum RPC functions. And it'll essentially just be a string ID. Constructor will use that ID. And then the only RPC function we have right now is account delete. And remember, we need to have the same ID that was used in the server project when we created that RPC function, which was account delete ID. Okay, so we have that. Now we need to create a block for account deletion. So within here, I'm going to call this again, and this will be called account delete. Now I'm going to go to account delete and let's modify this state. Account delete state. Add our imports, and we need a success flag on here because we need to know if the delete was successful. This dot success will be success and pass in our property. And then we need to go to account delete event. And we we need to create an event for deleting an account, which will just be delete account, which extends account delete event. Const delete account. Properties, there are none, so just an empty array. Perfect, we got that. Now let's go to our block. And what do we need for the account delete block? We need, first, we need an auth qubit, because when we delete an account, we want to call the auth qubit to log us out as well. Otherwise, we'll technically still be in the app without an account present, which obviously could be pretty bad. So we're going to call the auth qubit to log us out when we delete an account. So I'm going to add an auth qubit. Then we need a session service, and we need Nakama based client. Now let's go ahead and add all those in. Perfect. All right. Now the only method that we have, which was delete account. So we'll create delete account for account delete state. Add this up here. Oops. All right. Now when we need to delete an account, as always, is loading true, and then get a session. Whoops. Session service dot get session, and then we need to call that RPC function, and we can do that via the client. So on client there is a RPC function right here. We pass in a session, and then we pass in the ID of whatever RPC function we want to use. And we're going to use the one from our RPC functions enum, which is account delete. So it's going to call that same RPC function that's on the server. Now, if that is successful, that's when we will then call the auth qubit to log us out. And if that is good, then we're going to then update the success, because we've deleted our account successfully. So the success will say account deleted successfully. Now we can go to the view, and there won't be a page for account delete, so we can just comment that out. No issues there. But where account delete will actually take place is on the settings page. So I'm going to go to settings. I need to inject the account delete block here, because this is the only place where we will use the account delete block. So we're going to have it as close as possible to where it's needed. So let's return a block provider here. Block provider of type account delete block, and then we'll create the block account delete block. Oops. And that child will be the settings view. So we need an auth qubit. I'm going to put these up here. Actually, it doesn't really matter. I'll put them here. Context.read auth qubit. Context.read session service, and get Nakama client. Now I need to create a listener for this account delete block down here in the settings view. So instead of returning this GG scaffold widget so abruptly, I'm going to instead return a block listener for the account delete block. Account delete state. All right, and the listener. And let's have that child right here. All right. So within the listener, we're just going to display if it was success, show the success. If there was error, show the error. If state.success does not equal null, modal util show success, and whatever that success is. Same thing for the error, but we're going to show the error. Oops, show error. Then we're going to add a new tile for deleting the account. So that will be under authentication. So it'll be a new settings tile. I'm going to copy and paste this. It'll be for delete. It'll say delete account. And the on press that will happen is, first, we're going to make sure that the user wants to do this by getting a confirmation. And we'll say press yes to confirm if they decide to do so. If confirm is true, if it's not true, then we return. Otherwise, we're going to call that block, which I should create up here. Final account. I'll do this. Account read, account delete block. And then call it down here. Yeah. If confirmed does not equal true, account delete block, add delete account. All right, let's see what this looks like in the app. All right, let's go to settings, and we have this delete account button right here. So remember, I'm in trade.codes XX, which is right here. So, not search, I'm sorry. Settings, delete account, hit yes. Account deleted successfully, and I was logged out of the app. And I can verify this by coming over to this dashboard. Let's load this page again. And you can see there is no trade.codes XX because we were deleted successfully. Now we pretty much have majority of the functionality complete for updating an account, but we do need to handle situations where a user may want to either add a new authentication method or remove one. So what I mean by that is, let's say they log in with email in the beginning, but then later they want to be able to log in via Google or Apple, and they want to be assigned, they want to be able to go to the same account. We can do this by linking providers to an account. So let's first focus on linking an email to a user's account. So first I need to create two new events on the account update event class. Account update event. And the two events are going to be for linking an email and unlinking an email. So let's see, class link email extends account update event. And we're going to need an email and password in order to link the email to a user's account. So we'll get the email and password. And then within our constructor, link email, this.email, this.password. And do our overrides, pass in email and password. And then the same thing for unlink email, which won't have any information required. So we can just create the empty constructor like this and override our properties. All right, now let's go to the block, and we're going to add the methods for linking and unlinking. Let's create an event for link email, account update state, on link email, and when we link an email, we're going to, as always, I'm just going to copy and paste these. So we're going to set is loaded to true, going to get a session, and then we're going to call the client to link an email. Link email. Pass in the session, pass in the email that we get from the event, and pass in the password that we get from the event. Now, if that's successful, then we just want to emit a new state, a success state, saying that our email was linked successfully. Emit state.copy with success. Email linked successfully. Let's just say that. And let's do unlink email now. Unlink email. Oops. Unlink email. All right. Account update state. Unlink email. Now, for unlink email, going to be pretty similar. Once we have those two things, we're then going to get the email from the account, which could be nullable. And if it's null, then we're going to throw an exception, because we shouldn't be able to unlink an email if there isn't one present. This method will only be able to be called if there is one present. So if for some reason it's null, we'll just throw an exception, because this shouldn't even happen. And we'll say email account email is null. Now, if that's not the case, then we'll call the client and unlink email. Pass in the session, pass in the email, and we don't need the password. I mean, it's technically required for this method on the client, but it doesn't need a value. So you can just send an empty string. Now, if all that goes through successfully, then we will say, what do we say here? Email linked successfully. Let's just do the same. Email unlinked successfully. Now we need to go over to the settings page, and we're going to need to inject this new block as well. We need to inject the account update block. So we have the account delete block, we need account update block here as well. And we can do that by, instead of returning a block provider, we return a multi-block provider. Return multi-block provider. And we'll have the one that we already have here. And that child will just now be the settings view. All right. And now we're going to create another block provider for account update block. Oops. Account update block. And the reason we're doing that is because we already created an account update block on the edit profile page, but that's in another part of the app. So within the settings page, it has no idea of that account block, of that account update block that was created on that page. So we need to create another block here. So let's see, we need an account. So we can get that up here. Let's see how we want to do this. Let's say context.read account read block. And this will be an account read block. And then we'll get the account from the account read block. All right, so we pass in the account, pass in a session service, and in a get Nakama client. So I'm gonna just copy and paste those right here. So we have all the blocks that we need. Now let's go down here, and we're going to need to add a new listener. So here we're going to need another listener, because we have a listener for the account delete block. We need a listener for the account update block as well. So you guessed it, we can use a multi-block listener here. So instead of returning one block listener, let's return multi-block listener, provide the listeners, and then the child. So we already know that this is going to be our child, the GG scaffold widget. So I'm going to take this and we'll return this right here for right now. And then this listener that we have for the account delete block, we'll put that as our first listener in the list of providers. List of listeners. And I'm gonna copy and paste this because we need the same one for account update block. And it's the same thing, success, error, show error. Now I want to create a block builder here because we need to be updating the UI based on the current state of our account information. Because when we connect or disconnect our account via email, or once we link an email account or unlink an email account, our account information is updating. So then we want to change the UI to reflect those changes. So I'll return a block builder here. It'll be account read block. Account read block, account read state. And let's provide the builder here, which will just return all this that we already have. Perfect. Okay. Now within here, we need to know, are we currently linked to, is our email account currently linked? And the way we do that is just create a Boolean that says, is email linked? And we do that by checking state, account, email. Do I already have that account here? I don't. I'll just keep it down here. Email dot is not empty, otherwise false. All right, so is email linked will only be true if there is value in that email property on the account. Otherwise, is email linked will be false. So now we're going to create a new settings section. Let's see here, settings section. The title will be connected accounts, and we'll have some tiles here. And let's see, first tile will be a switch tile. Well, they'll all be switch tiles, but settings dot switch tile. Now the initial value is going to be, is email linked? Because if we are linked, then the switch tile should be activated. If we're not linked, it should be deactivated. So we'll just pass in is email linked right here. The title will be a text widget that says link to email. And then we need to add the on toggle. So if the value is true, which means we were deactivated, but now we've activated it, that means we want to link an email account. So we're first going to need an email and password from the user. And we can do that from the modal. So I'm just going to get that as a result from the modal util. Show email password dialog. And this is going to return a record. I believe they call these records within Flutter, but it's essentially the email and password, just two properties. And if the result is null, which means that they've canceled the modal and we didn't get a result, then just return act like nothing happened. If it's not null, that means we have value. Then we'll get those values. The email will be the result and the first property on the result. And then the password will be the first property or the second property on the result. Now, once we have both of those, we can call, not the account delete block. We want the account. Let's make a block for that. Account delete block, account update block. call the account update block down here. Add link email and pass in the email and password. Now, this is if the value is true. So we need to check for that. I'm going to copy this and first say if val, which means true, then we'll do this. Now, if val is not true, meaning that we were activated, but then we deactivated, that means we want to unlink. So all we're going to do is call the same thing, but just call unlink email here. And I'm also going to add a leading widget here because I want a little icon for some UI. And I'll just have icons email. All right, let's demonstrate. All right, let's log in. Oh, don't have an account there. Let me try another account. Let me log in with this one. All right, we're in Trade Designs. Go to settings. As you can see, we're already activated because we have an email linked to our account. And right now, if we try to unlink, it'll say cannot unlink last account identifier. This is simply because this is the only identifier that we have for accessing our account. We won't be able to deactivate this until we have other providers connected. So let's go ahead and jump into that. Similar to linking an email, we need to create some new events for being able to link Google. So let's go back to the account update event again. Account update event, and we're going to need a method for linking Google. We'll call link Google account update event. Oops. And provide our props. And we need the same thing for unlink Google. Perfect. Now let's go to the account update block. And we're going to need to inject a new service in here. We need that social auth service that we used in previously, because we need to get the ID tokens in order to link and unlink. So we'll just pass that in, social auth service. Oops. Social auth service. And we're going to need to update it wherever that's at. Let's see where that's at. It's in two places because we have two account update blocks. So context.read social auth service. And I'm going to put it here as well. Perfect. All right, now let's create the method for linking Google. Block E, link Google, account update state. Let's see here. We're going to need same thing as always. Let's copy these. And the first thing is we need to get the ID token for this Google account, whichever one we're trying to link it to. We need the ID token. ID token equals await social auth service dot get Google token. If ID token equals null, which we've seen this in previous video, but if it's null, we don't really care about doing anything. We're just going to emit the state with no properties to pretty much turn is loading flag off, and then just return like nothing happened. Okay. If we have an ID token, then we'll call the client, link Google, pass in a session, and then pass in that ID token that we got earlier. Now, if all that's good, emit a new success that will say Google account linked successfully. Now, for unlink Google, it's going to be pretty similar. Matter of fact, it's going to be so similar. I'm going to just copy and paste. Let's see here. Unlink Google on Unlink Google. All right. Get Google token. That all looks the same. Yeah, I think everything is the same here pretty much, except we're just going to call Unlink Google here. And then Google account unlinked successfully. And then let's be sure to register these events up here. Link Google, on link Google, on unlink Google, on unlink Google, unlink Google. Is this wrong? Unlink Google, on unlink Google. Oh, there we go. I think that's right. Yep. All right, now let's go back to the settings page, because within here, within the listener for the account update block, which is right here, if there's a success, that means an account has been updated and we want to read the account information again. So if account update block has success, that means we want our account read block to then call read account again. And we can do that by calling, let me create a block for that. Account read block. And we will call read account again. Pretty much saying, all right, it's time to get some new information because something was updated. All right, and then we'll come down here, and similar to is email linked, we're going to have one for is Google linked. Is Google linked. And we can do that by checking the user dot Google ID dot is not empty. So if there's value there, that means that we have a Google account already linked. So let's go down to where we have the connected accounts. I'm going to create a new settings switch tile for linking Google. This will be is Google linked. We can take out all this for right now. The leading will be a Google icon. Let's see, icon, font, awesome. They have a nice Google icon. Google. And this will be called link Google. And then within here, it's much simpler. All we need to do is check and see if val, which means true, which means we need to link Google. Then we're going to call account update block dot add link Google. Otherwise, we're going to call account update block add unlink Google. Perfect. Let's demonstrate this. All right, I'm going to go to the settings page, and we have this new link to Google provider. Right now, I don't have any, I'm not linked to Google, so that's why it's deactivated. But let's go ahead and try to activate that now. So I'm going to select continue, select my user account, hit continue, and Google account linked successfully. And as you can see, it was toggled on. And I can verify that this works by going to the dashboard, looking for the account for Trade Designs. And you can see that we have a Google ID attached to this account now. Same thing if I were to unlink Google. I would need to select my Google account, hit continue, and now I'm unlinked successfully. Now let's try and unlink the email, because we currently have a Google one. So now we're able to unlink email successfully because now it's not the only one that's available. We have Google to lean back on. So you always need at least one provider connected to an account. That way you can have a way to log in. So I'm going to connect this again. trade hold one. And now email is linked successfully. So Google and email are working as expected. Last but not least, we need to be able to link and unlink for Apple. And it's going to be very similar to everything we just did for linking Google, almost copy and paste really. So you'll probably see me do that quite a lot here. Let's go to account update event. And let's add link and unlink for Apple. Link Apple and unlink Apple. All right, let's go to the block, account update block, and I'm going to copy and paste all of this just for Apple. So we have link Apple, which will use the link Apple event. And we're going to get the Apple token here. And then we will call link Apple and say Apple account linked successfully. We also have unlink Apple, which we'll call the unlink Apple event. And we will call get Apple token here and call unlink Apple. And instead we'll say Apple account unlinked successfully. Pretty simple. Now, all we got to do is go to the settings page and create the same setup that we did for is Google linked to determine if we are already connected to this provider. So is Google linked, copy and paste, is Apple linked, and we'll be looking for an Apple ID. And then come down here, we'll copy and paste this, and we'll pass in is Apple linked for the initial value. If value is true, we're going to call link Apple. Otherwise, we'll call unlink Apple. We'll display the Apple icon, and this will say link Apple. Time to demonstrate. All right, let's go to settings. We have link to Apple. Now let's go ahead and try to toggle this. Can we get some action? What's the issue here? Bad state. It was called. Oh, was it not registered? Let me see. Account update block. I did not register them. That's my fault. Let's do that for Apple. Link Apple. Unlink Apple. Unlink Apple. Unlink Apple. And let's refresh this. All right, settings, link to Apple. It'll ask me for my sign in and Apple account linked successfully. So we come over here and check the tray designs. And as you can see, I now have an Apple ID attached to this account. So that means I have been connected to Apple. So I'm able to log in either via Apple, Google, or with email.